She stepped onto the brightly lit stage slowly, each foot dragging just slightly, as though every movement cost her effort. The audience murmured, some chuckling, some whispering, wondering why a woman her age had agreed to perform on a flashy talent show. The producer stood backstage smirking proudly. He had invited her not for talent, but for entertainment. An old lady fumbling through a piano piece was good TV, as he put it. She heard the whispers. She felt the eyes on her. But she kept walking toward the piano, brushing her trembling fingers along its polished edge. The host introduced her as Grandma Grace, a name she'd never shared but one they invented for comic effect. People snickered at the nickname. But her face showed no embarrassment, only a soft sadness she carried like a shadow. When asked what she planned to play, she answered quietly, "A song I wrote, a long time ago." The judges exchanged doubtful looks. One raised an eyebrow, another sighed impatiently. They expected a disaster. Yet something in her tone, gentle, but full of old memories, made one young judge lean forward curiously. She placed her hands on the keys, her fingers hovering as if they recognized the instrument more intimately than the people around her recognized each other. The lights dimmed slightly. The crowd waited for the mistake, the wobble, the clumsy beginning. Instead, she paused. A long, steady breath left her chest. And in that breath lived decades of love, heartbreak, dreams, and losses she'd never shared. The entire room felt it, even before a single note was played. Then, with a softness that felt like a prayer, she began. The first notes floated gently across the hall, delicate but sure, like petals drifting on water. The audience froze. Her hands, once shaky, glided over the keys with elegance, each note blooming into the next. The judge's eyes widened. The laughter died instantly, replaced by stunned silence. The producer backstage stepped forward, confused, unable to believe what he was hearing. Her melody grew deeper, stronger, filled with a kind of sorrow that didn't break, but healed. People who had come to laugh now felt their throats tighten. As the song unfolded, a story emerged without words. A young woman falling in love. A husband going off to war and never returning. A child she raised alone. Nights she spent teaching herself music because it was the only thing that kept her heart alive. Every note held a memory, every chord carried a wound that had turned into wisdom. The audience didn't know these details, but they felt them. Tears began to fall, first from a few, then from many. Even the young judge, the one who had sensed something special, could no longer hide his emotion. Near the end of the performance, her hands slowed. The melody softened to a whisper, then lifted in a final, trembling sigh of sound. When the last note faded, the silence that followed was thick with awe. No applause yet, just breathless stillness. Then, like a wave breaking free, the entire auditorium rose to its feet. People clapped, cried, shouted her name. The judges wiped tears from their eyes. The young judge was the first to run onto the stage, helping her stand, telling her she was the greatest performer he'd ever heard. But she only smiled gently and whispered, "It's just a song, from an old life." The producer pushed through the crowd, guilt flooding his face. He had brought her on stage to mock her, never expecting that she would reveal a talent that humbled him completely. He apologized, voice breaking, unable to meet her eyes. She laid a hand on his arm and said softly, "Kindness matters more than entertainment. Remember that." Those simple words hit him harder than any criticism. In that moment, his entire view of success changed. And he knew he would never again use a person's dignity for ratings. As the cameras stopped rolling, the young judge walked with her backstage. He told her he used to play piano as a child but quit when life became too heavy. After hearing her, he felt inspired to return to music. She smiled and told him, "Music doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be honest." It was a lesson he carried with him for the rest of his life. For her, the performance wasn't about fame or redemption. It was a farewell, a final offering from a heart that had carried too much love to ever let the world forget it. Before she left the studio, the entire staff lined up to thank her. The same people who once doubted her now treated her as if she were royalty. She stepped outside into the cool night air, the applause still echoing in her ears. She looked up at the sky, closed her eyes, and whispered the same words she had whispered at the end of her performance, "For you." No one knew who she meant, but she did. And as she walked away, The world felt just a little more grateful, a little more humble, and a little more human. That night, an old woman had stepped onto a stage to be laughed at. But she walked off as a legend, leaving behind a melody that changed the lives of everyone who heard it. And for one man in particular, it changed his life forever.